Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for our 100,000th download special, kind of. And the reason it's a bit special is because a good couple of years ago, almost 3 years ago, one of the first guests that we ever had on the podcast that kind of got me mega excited when they said yes, they were coming on the podcast, was a gentleman who was responsible for a couple of my favourite games, including Dead of Winter. And it was a gentleman by the name of John Gilmour. So I am delighted to say that on this momentous occasion of lots of people downloading, I don't know if they've listened, they could just be pressing the download button a lot of times. I've not only managed to arrange for John to come back on, but his design partner, his design buddy, the kind of the Starsky to his Hutch, the yin to his yang, you know, the Triceratops to his Tyrannosaurus Rex. I bring you Mr. Brian Lewis. So, good evening, and they're here to work together. They're here to be fresh. They're here to be mint cooperative. It's Brian and John.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
No, I'm delighted. I'm kind of excited. I might kind of get a bit fanboy, kind of stupid excited, so I might need to calm down. But you know, you can't have everything. You've both been on the show before, so you know the kind of nonsense to expect. But first of all, for people who haven't listened to the show before, the reason that we do this is because there's quite simply not enough podcasts out there about tabletop. You know, I've searched. There's just not enough. And the second reason that we do this is when you reach the level that we've reached, you might as well just keep on going. And you get to the point where you just start asking people that have been on the show before. So it's pretty fantastic.
I mean, when you invited me, I'd never even heard of a podcast before.
I know. It's like I'm opening. And now look at you. You're kind of live streaming. And
a whole new world opened up because of you.
You're just a content creator. It's you've joined the dark side. You're kind of like Ben Kenobi. You've Kylo Ren'd it.
I dabble in the dark side.
I've seen that written on a couple of walls somewhere, but I can't tell you which walls there are, and I certainly didn't take any photographic evidence. It sounds to me like Brian is going to have to be the one that's going to keep us from getting too silly.
Are
you willing to do that, Mr. Lewis?
Willing and able.
That's... I don't know how you're going to do it, considering the distance, but we're willing to kind of see. As I say, we're talking here about kind of Mint Cooperative, which you guys are kind of working together. Back together along with 524 Labs. Is this the first time that you guys have cooperated again since the kind of the Dinosaur Island type days?
We have a couple other designs that haven't come out yet.
Right.
Okay.
But I think this is the first thing we made after Dinosaur Island, right?
There was one that's in the pipeline, but that's been around for a while. So this was the first game I think we designed together after the expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So have you been kind of like staying in constant contact since you started kind of working together, Brian? Have you been kind of staying in contact, working with ideas and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's so both John and I work for Pandasaurus Games now, so we're more in contact than before, even almost on a daily basis. So,
all right,
yeah, it's been good to reconnect us in that way. Sometimes it's so hard to have time to design, and then you get an idea, and you're like, "Hey, I have this idea. What do you think?" And you go from there.
Mm-hmm.
So have you both got kind of like the Pandasaurus email addresses then?
We do.
Yes.
And we just send messages back and forth using them, so he feels special.
All I have in my inbox are messages from John. That's it.
Do you ever reply yet? Or are the emails kind of like John saying, "Why didn't you reply to my previous message?" Hello?
I set him an auto reply when Brian emails me, so he thinks I'm paying attention.
See, I have out of office on, so he just gets that message all the time.
He thinks you've been on holiday since November 2018 or something like that.
Right.
I was wondering how work was getting done.
He works best when he's on vacation. I mean, that's how it kind of
right.
That's how it kind of works. Jumping quickly back into kind of like Dinosaur Island. That's proved to continue to be a success. We've got the kind of the Dulosaur Island kind of 2-player kind of variant. Are you going to be jumping back into that franchise again, or is that something you're just like, no, we're cool where we are, we're just going to leave it as is kind of thing?
I mean, we don't have any official plans that we can announce, but we've talked about things with Molly and Nathan, and we'll see where they go.
Okay. With you both kind of working alongside Pandasaurus, have you then been working on the other projects that they've been involved in? I know, John, that you were partly involved in the Dead Man's Cabal that came out kind of recently, but because you guys are all working together, Brian, do you get to share and see stuff that maybe John's working on as well, just as kind of something like a sounding board to kind of pass kind of ideas?
So I just joined Pandasaurus last month, so it's been kind of a work in progress with us, right? So I'm handling the community aspect, dealing with customers and backers and stuff like that, and trade shows. But that being said, I did visit John, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, and got to play some stuff that was in the pipeline that is actually really exciting. It's some really cool stuff. I'll let John address that more because I don't know what can be said, but I played a couple games that were just so much fun that I'm really excited for what's coming out from Pandasaurus. It's very unique.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of really cool things coming up, and we announced a couple of them at Gen Con. Brian hasn't gotten to play Godspeed yet, but we just announced that one.
Okay.
And Wayfinders. So I came in to the company last year. I don't remember exactly when. I think towards the middle of the year.
Yeah.
And I'd been doing contract development for them before that. So I'm the head of development. I kind of scout all our new games and, make sure we're finding games that really match our brand and that are top notch. And then once I show them to Molly and Nathan and they, trying to take care of all the contract stuff, then I do the development, put them through mass play testing, and do that portion. But yeah, we're working on a little bit of a structure where, the whole team, because we're all in different places. Molly and Nathan are in Texas. Christian's in New York, I believe. Brian's in Michigan. I'm in Ohio. So we're going to try to have a couple times a year where we, meet up and get to go over all the games and play them together. Because there's just not enough time at conventions to do that.
I mean, with you working kind of full-time development-wise with Pandasaurus, has that freed up time for you to prioritize and kind of feel a little bit more organized, feel less like you're kind of chasing your tail? Or are you still having to chase up kind of older projects and things like that as well that you're kind of working on? I
mean, it definitely hasn't reduced the amount of time that I work in a week. kind of the majority of my days spent doing over playtesting and working on pushing out new versions of the game. And then kind of I've been working on my designs after hours because those are kind of like side work again for me. So I definitely wouldn't say that it's freed up time, but it's helped make it a little bit more scheduled. It has taken some pressure off for me, which is nice because I feel less like I have to keep putting games out and rush them to market. I can spend more time because I don't have to worry about being paid quarterly anymore, which is nice.
Yeah, and doing the budget. And for you, Brian, when we spoke, you were working for a private company. I believe you weren't directly employed in the kind of the board game industry. I think when we spoke.
No, I wasn't. That kind of happened. It was serendipitous, I think. Back in October. I'm sorry, June. I mean, I was at Origins, and I had mentioned to Molly and Nathan that I was, really looking to make a transition into the board game industry. I mentioned that, and then about 3 or 4 weeks later, they reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you interested in doing this?" And I said, "Yeah." And it was just kind of a weird, serendipitous moment. Was it strange though, kind of reaching out and kind of saying, "Okay, would you want to come and kind of work for us?" I mean, how did that kind of feel at the time? Were you just kind of like, am I dreaming here? I've got to pinch myself a little bit here. With Molly and Nathan, it was, it was surprising to me, and it was also very scary because I was working for a major corporation at the time, and benefits and healthcare and 401k and all those things, and when you're asked to give that up, you have to really think about it, because the board game industry is so volatile at times that you never know if a company's going to be around for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, so you have to kind of look at it in that way. And then I think Pandasaurus is doing so well that I was worried for about half a day, I think. And then I said to myself, "You're stupid if you don't jump on this." So I did it. I took the leap of faith, and probably the best decision I've done, because I would have probably been miserable staying with my old company.
And probably second best decision besides co-designing with me.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean that's just a given. That's.
It's the second best because you decided to work with me full time.
Correct.
Was that like the zinger? Did you like slam your virtual hand on the virtual desk and say, "Look, I'll come and join you, but I want 100% Gilmour attention here. I ain't moving for anybody unless I'm proved I want him on tap. I want to know what his email address is, the real one, not the fake one that you kind of hand out." But
Brian's contract says he'll only work there if I still work there, so I can't quit.
You're kind of stuck there. It's kind of like a Shawshank Redemption type of deal. Is that you're both together kind of forever?
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is fine. Unless one of you decide to dig a tunnel, I don't know how that's kind of going to work. But John, you've been kind of doing the freelance stuff, kind of on and on. So did you help kind of settle Brian's mind over the decision as well? Because there's always the kind of the pause, even if you're in the job, and it's different over in the UK because we believe people having access to healthcare. In the States, I can understand the whole thing about, having to ask the question where it is a case of, if I don't have decent healthcare, regardless of what the job is, it's not actually worthwhile me considering kind of moving. With you being on a freelance kind of basis, were you able to kind of reassure Brian and say, actually, this is what I've been doing for X number of years now, and everything will be fine and all right and things like that?
I wish I could have, but no. That's still one of the big struggles over here is, small companies a lot of times don't have, health insurance, and as a freelancer, we certainly didn't have it. So, Nathan and Molly are trying to get things figured out, because before I came on board, it was just them.
Yeah.
And then, I started working with them, and Hunter started working with them. And even then, it was just 4 people. So, it's been a lot of it trying to grow and, them figure things out.
In terms of the Pandasaurus kind of brand, it seems to have really solidified itself as one of the kind of the bigger players out there, and not just because, the successful Kickstarters that it has, it's also the kind of the regular kind of published kind of titles that it self-publishes. Do you think that's the kind of the secret to kind of success? Do you think that's one of the things that game companies can't always rely on Kickstarter, and they need to be kind of looking at putting the product out there through normal kind of distribution methods?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think Molly and Nathan have a great. They both have an excellent head for business, and they've always had a good vision for the company. And I think it was probably 3 years ago at Gen Con, we had like a big group dinner with all their designers and people they worked with, and they kind of asked the question like, what is the one thing that we need to improve on the most? And, I told them that I felt like the development was the most important thing. Like, we had to make sure that, as a company, there weren't any missteps, and there weren't any, games coming out that weren't top notch. So I think that's really where kind of most of our focus has been going, is, trying to make sure that, in case there is a market shrinkage, or, we don't think it's going to be a bubble like some people are worried about. But, if we do have that shrinkage, just making sure that, we have we're known quantity, and people can, if they buy one of our games, that they're going to be held up to a certain standard.
Has games like The Mind, do you think that's helped as well? That you've ended up with a game that's become like a core offering,
I most definitely. I mean, so it that whole thing started with the game, and it did so well. When you have that type of partnership with another publisher, NSV, that they're going to continue to offer their games to us first, because that we've sold them well, and we've had those basically evergreen titles. You've got the game, you've got the Mind, you've got upcoming Silver and Gold. I think is going to be huge. Illusion has done really well. So all those card games have done really well, and having those games where they sell consistently to the local game stores, because they're so inexpensive, they'll order 6 of them. And to have those sales every day and fostering those relationships is really what I think has distinguished Pandasaurus from other publishers. Pandasaurus has this continuing catalog of what you might, I guess, call evergreen titles. And that's what's super important to the growth of the business, is to have those evergreen titles, but then introducing new titles in addition to Kickstarter, because like you said, you can't just rely on Kickstarter to fund your business.
Do you think that's allowed with having that kind of foundation there to kind of look at slightly more risky, maybe slightly less what you would say commercial type games? I mean, I'm looking at, say, for instance, Mental Blocks. Now, that to me, it looks a bit kind of left of field. It's not something that I would expect maybe to see kind of on Kickstarter. But I guess with having the kind of the foundation of everything else kind of doing so well, do you think that's allowed you to kind of look further afield and bring in kind of more slightly unusual ideas and unusual games into the Pandasaurus fold?
Yeah, if I may, I think that it does to some extent, but that really we've kind of spent a lot of time internally discussing what our 3 kind of channels of games are. And I think, that narrowing that down and really figuring out, what we want out of a game and where it fits in our lineup. But Metal Blocks actually kind of fits in one of our lines that we focus on. And those are kind of, the first one is small box card games, like 90 to 120 cards with really strong mechanical hooks. So, the mind, illusion, the game, things like that. And then the next one is midweight Euros with strong themes, and theme and mechanical ties. So, Dead Man's Cabal, Dinosaur Island, Wasteland Express. And then the third channel, and this is the one that I get the most excited about, is unique experiences. So probably our first one for that was Nyctophobia.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of where we tested the grounds, with finding a game that was just something that didn't exist on the market and gave players, an entirely different experience that they couldn't get someplace else. So, that's one of the things that we're looking for. And, a couple of the games that Brian was talking about playing the other week when he was here that he's really excited about are titles in that area. Because we have some things coming out that are just so different and so unique that, even as prototypes, I can't stop playing them. Like, I'll bring them to game day, and I never play prototypes at our game days.
But I guess you've got to keep the excitement up, haven't you? I mean, it's not a case you can't just keep you end up getting tired if a company just continues in the same direction and just produces X number of game with a slightly different skin on it. And I think what's interesting about the board game space is that it has the potential to go horrifically like that way, like the video game market has, in that all the major studios just seem to pour out the same game again and again and again, with an occasional bit of difference, which gets, lauded as the next greatest, best thing, whereas you've got indies try kind of different things kind of all the time. But it's looking at the kind of the Pandasaurus range, and there is something. It looks like there's currently kind of something for everyone, and there's this Machikoro Legacy kind of game as well. Have either of you had any kind of involvement in that, or is that something that you're not connected with?
I didn't. That was one of the last ones that came through before I took over all the development. Okay. So J.R. Honeycutt and Rob Davio did all the design and development and play testing on that one.
Cool. I'm kind of excited to see what they can do with Machikoro, because it's one of these. I think it's a very Marmite type game. People either love it to bits, or they don't like it. They're not too fussed on getting it.
I think they definitely took a lot of steps to address some of those things. So I think the people who are on the fence about it or don't love it should definitely give it another look.
So have you had a chance to play it then? Is that what you're saying? Have you had a chance to have a quick run?
I have.
Yeah, it was a release at Gen Con this year. So there are copies in the wild, so there are people playing it. Yeah. But I think the release date is September 4th.
Yeah. I'll be interested. I'm interested to see what the wider kind of gaming media think about it. I'm just interested to see what it'll be playing like as well. I'm still thinking legacy games are an avenue which have been kind of very, very well explored, but not 100% really hit their stride. I'm interested to see what happens. I mean, even something like Charterstone, I've seen people kind of have mixed feelings over Charterstone. Were completely enthralled with it, and then over a period of time kind of stepped away from it, which was just I'm interested to see where the kind of legacy type of thing kind of goes. How did you get involved with 524 Labs then? I mean, how did that kind of come around?
Well, I'll be curious to see what John remembers. This is what I remember.
Right, okay.
I remember I was down working with John on
we could do like a Mr. and Mrs. type of thing. If John, if you want to cover your ears just now, and then what happens, Brian, if you tell your side of the story, and then we'll get John to tell his side of the story.
Tell mine. Right.
Which is just kind of like the dating game where we set him off, he'll get those headphones on, and he'll come back.
Exactly.
Yeah,
there's a chance to win a microwave.
Right. I remember talking to John, and I said, do you know Justin from 524 Labs? And because John knows so many people. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, he said, I don't. I said, well, we should reach out to them about working on a game for them, because they had just finished their Kickstarter for Mint Delivery.
Yes.
And it had done about, I think, like 170,000, 170,000, like 18,000 units or something like that. It was ridiculous. And he said, no, but let me reach out to him right now. So he just went on the computer, sent an email to Justin, and Justin responded within like 10 minutes. And he said, well, what's your hook or pitch? And we said, we're interested in designing a cooperative game that fits in the Mint tin. And he said, I'd love to see it. And that's kind of how it got started.
Yeah, I think the only difference is that I think I asked them what type of game they hadn't been able to do yet. Right. And they're like, well, we've wanted to do a co-op game, but we haven't figured it out yet. And I was like, well, that's great. We'll try our hands at that.
So did you sit down then, and did you sit down all together with Justin and decide what direction you're going in? Or did you just did you both reach into the notebooks of the game ideas and went, oh, I've got a Mint 10 game right here. Let me just check page 37.
Well, what's so funny is that when I was there visiting John, working together, and he responded, we were like, well, let's go work on it right now. So we literally went into the next office and got one of the Mint tins and said, like, well, let's see what components fit in here. And that was kind of our guideline as to what can we use, what can we maybe make new or add. And so one of the original ideas that we came up with was using the mints as flying saucers.
All right, okay.
And that the original theme of the game, I think I wanted to call it Mint Attacks or something like that. And it was a homage to like 50s alien invasion.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That the little discs were flying saucers, and you had to keep them from invading the cities.
Yeah, and the core gameplays really stayed really close to that. They didn't love that theme, so they rethemed it to superheroes, but I mean, everything stuck really well, which was nice, and it transitioned well.
Is it more fun to kind of be working in a kind of restricted space then, Brian? Was it more of a challenge to say, right, you're going to only have 16 cards at maximum, you're only going to be allowed to have 25 pieces kind of thing, and you've got to go ahead and you've got to create something?
Yeah, I think that's always, to me, seems like on a case-by-case basis. In this particular case, it was very, I don't know, it really got my creative juices flowing, and I really enjoyed that aspect of trying to make something fit with what we had. I liked that. I don't always like that, but for this particular project, it worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of restrictions in design. And I always try to start all of my designs with putting restrictions on myself, so it worked well for me.
And for people who are sitting there going, well, what's it about? I mean, is it a worker placement style game? Is it what would you say for people kind of and what's the kind of the main mechanics, kind of, John?
So in the game, you are superheroes trying to save Mint City. Is that what it's called, Brian? Mint City now? Mintopia. That's right. But kind of the core mechanics are a dice drafting,
right,
action selection. So,
right.
I'll let Brian talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So there are 4 dice in the game, and you roll the dice, and based on the numbers there are actions that you can take based on either your hero ability, which has a special action, or a set of actions. So it's very simple, but elegant, in my opinion. The one thing we had to kind of figure out was, well, it's kind of boring to just roll dice, take actions. How do you make it more exciting or make it so that the game progresses in this cooperative style? And the thing that we came up with was, as we're playing with 4 dice, obviously as you're rolling the dice, you see that, you tend to have doubles and sometimes triples when you're rolling the dice. So when you roll doubles, it triggers a trouble phase in the game, which you reveal cards, and the villains will be placing mints in the cities to overtake them. So, and then if you roll triples, even more bad stuff happens. And based on the villains in the game, doubles and triples will do different things in the game. So it all plays a little bit different depending on which villain you're deciding to choose to play with.
Did you... Is it quite a long game?
No,
I mean, what's the kind
actually,
of the game like?
I'd say max is probably 30 minutes. Most people will probably pay in 20 to 25 minutes. And that was one of the things that when we were working on. It's like, how do we get this game to play? Because obviously it's a portable game, but you don't want this $15 or $10 game or whatever the cost is going to be to last an hour. That's just not fun. You want something portable. You want something, and one of our main design goals was to create something that was on a beginner / introductory level to the game. So if you've never played a co-op game before, this is on the easier side. And because I think the rule book is 2 pages. Or 2 sides of a sheet, so there aren't super complicated rules, but you still have choices and decisions to make which impact gameplay.
Did you look at kind of having more complicated rules in it as well for people if they wanted to? Has it got a bit of flexibility?
Well, I think where the complication comes in is with the villains in the game, and their triggered abilities. So there are some additional little mechanics, but nothing that requires an entire page of directions. It's something as simple as saying, okay, the red discs that are in the game, they now do this instead of the traditional in the way you play. So you can get different plays and different levels of difficulty based on the villain that you're trying to defeat.
And we really aimed at making the game have a decent amount of depth of strategy without making it overly complex, because we both feel that's a thing that a lot of designers conflate, and they mix the two up. But it's, even though it's kind of more entry level game, just kind of like Dinosaur Island and some of my other designs, even Dead of Winter, like it's a pretty easy game to teach, but there's a decent amount of strategy involved in getting better at it.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to actually be able to get a game and start playing relatively quickly, and then learn the complexity kind of as it goes. I mean, the thing I liked about Dinosaur Island was it was like kind of like there was 4 almost separate parts to it. And that kind of broke it down, that you could learn the rules kind of easier that way, and then bringing them together and how they interacted across each other down the line, that's what kind of brought in the complexity to it and almost the mastery to the game kind of going on. Has it encouraged you to look at, it sounds like you both had fun kind of creating this, but has it encouraged you to maybe look at other kind of games with this kind of size, these kind of restrictions in it? I mean, you're thinking about a series, I guess, is what I'm asking.
I think that, that'll entirely be up to them. They'll probably want to see how this game performs, and this is the first time they've worked with another designer. Justin's designed. I think Justin and Mel maybe were the designers on all the other stuff.
Right.
Yes.
So this was kind of an experiment for them and the whole company because, there's a lot of work that goes into, running a publisher, and trying to design your own stuff is even more work. So we'll see if they come back to us and say, hey, we're happy with it, and do y'all want to make something else? I'll be happy to, as long as Brian's on board.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of the Kickstarter, do you know kind of any ideas of kind of like the costings or anything like that? What the price of entry is going to be? Do you know anything along those lines in terms of figures?
I think I don't now. Of course, don't quote me, but I believe that the entry price point will be $10 plus shipping. So, like their other Kickstarters, but I think it's going to be based on final pricing from the factories on the cost.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the this ongoing kind of tariff thing, which is kind of made things a little bit less kind of, I guess, it's put it a little bit kind of fuzzy and a bit hazy about kind of potential costs kind of going forward. Are we going to see more designs coming from you guys? I mean, obviously this one's going to be coming out on the 9th of September. I mean, that's what I was speaking to Rachel at 524, and that's what she said, that that's when the kind of the launch date is going to be. Is there other games that you two are just going to be working on that you've been kind of looking at, which is going to be solely you two together kind of going forward? Is there anything you've got kind of in the pipeline coming out over the next couple of months at all?
I don't know about the couple months, but I mean, one of our goals with Brian being, full time in the industry now is that we can make more time to work on a few more projects together. And I enjoyed designing with him, so hopefully we will.
Is there anything you'd like to work together on? I mean, I guess this is a time for both of you to either confess and say, actually, John, if we could do some kind of big worker placement game, that would be peachy. And then John says, I'd like to do a follow-up to Wasteland Express delivery service, but let's bring some dinosaurs in it.
Dinosaur Express delivery service?
Right.
Done.
I think, for me, it's always the best ideas seem to happen organically. So what it comes down to is like, having an idea, and then I will, contact John and say, what do you think about this? Because I typically, honestly, don't love designing by myself. I love the feedback of other designers or other people as I'm working on something. And so, I don't work a lot solo. I almost everything is working with someone else. Some people like it, some people don't. I tend to love the instant feedback from a co-designer, and that's so, and then you're talking about getting our schedules to work together, which is not always easy as well. John is super busy and travels a lot for the company, so I think in the next 2 months he's gone 6 or 7 of the weekends.
I think I have 6 more conventions in the next 7 weeks.
Are you going to Essen then, John?
I will not be at Essen, unfortunately.
I will be at Essen, though.
Okay.
Nobody asked you, Brian. Nobody asked you. You just mind your own business.
I will be there.
Sorry, Brian. I couldn't hear you, Brian. Did you say you're going to Essen?
I am going to Essen. I just got my passport yesterday.
John.
Actually,
he's very proud that he'll make it before Essen before I do.
And you're not going to Essen, John?
I am not. I have to go to a real work convention.
That shot's fired.
I don't need to go on fun trips.
I'm almost wondering if I should get you some gin for that bitter lemon you've got there, Joe.
But I will say, Brian and I have talked about a really fun RPG idea. So we'll see if we work on that one soon. Depends on how much more he rubs Essen in my face.
Well, I mean, I think I was going to say that's the title for the show. Depends how much he rubs Essen in my face.
Now that's a podcast I would listen to. But yeah, the RPG idea we have is, in my opinion, just like so brilliant. But it's one of those. Maybe it's a really good idea in your head, but maybe it's not good on paper.
It'll be good on paper.
Okay.
I don't know. You never know about these things. I mean, you did. You were involved in Kids on Bikes, John, weren't you?
I was. Yeah.
Were you surprised at how kind of well that was received, or did you kind of like secretly know, here we go, I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm kind of talking about? Because I have always associated you with things like, Dead of Winter, Dinosaur Island, the Atari stuff that you did as well. And then when you said you were getting involved in an RPG, I was kind of like, how can an RPG be John Gilmour? if you know what I mean.
Well, so I mean, even on Dead of Winter, I've always played RPGs since I was a teenager. So when I was working on Dead of Winter, I tried to bring a lot of my love of RPGs into that game. But this was a big, scary endeavor because I've never designed an RPG before. And I haven't really put my dues in the industry. So I was definitely skeptical when Doug and I first started working on it. We were going to just kickstart it ourselves. And, we were like, well, if we make like, $10,000 and print, like 1,000 copies of this, we'll be real happy. And then I just happened to run into Ivan Van Norman, who runs Hunter Books and, does a lot of stuff with Geek and Sundry at Gen Con, probably about 4 weeks before we were going to kickstart it because we wanted to run it over Halloween. And, I showed him it on my phone because he asked me what I was working on. And he's like, I'm on my way to a meeting right now, but don't show this to anybody else. And, he went to his meeting and then got a hold of me and he's like, listen, I'd really like to publish this. This idea sounds great. Because I showed him like some of the basic concepts that we were playing with. And then they picked it up and then the Kickstarter did really well for an RPG. And then, they linked up with Renegade and since then, it's been great. It's really performed well. It just won an ENnie at Gen Con.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, we just launched Teens in Space, which is kind of our follow-up game.
Yeah. I mean, did you expect this to kind of happen? Did you expect to be going down the RPG route yourself? I mean, did this come along as a bit of a surprise of how well it's kind of been received? It
definitely came as a surprise. We really thought it was just going to be like a small little labor of love project and like maybe a couple hundred people would play it. So, super surprised. But, I mean, I am always the biggest critic and biggest doubter of my own work. So, I mean, even with Dead of Winter, I don't think any of my games were going to be well received. So I'm always very surprised by them.
I think by now you've got to be a little bit that, I'm a little bit good at this.
Yeah, you'd think so, but I'm not. I'm very... I'd like to tell people that imposter syndrome goes away, but I don't think it ever does.
Yeah, I still get that. I think I kind of met the people from No Pun Included over the weekend there, and I was kind of like, part of me was just like, yeah, I'm just sitting here with the No Pun Included folk, and then part of me just like kind of went, I've got to stand up and walk away because I feel like I shouldn't be sitting here kind of thing, which was kind of weird because they're just people. They're just like, they're normal kind of everyday people and you just had a chat with them. But you kind of sometimes get that kind of like, do I deserve this place at the table or am I just keeping the seat warm for somebody kind of more deserving, which I kind of completely I think everybody kind of gets that regardless of even how successful. I guess Brian must even be thinking that, kind of taking his first steps and being kind of like full-time kind of in the industry. I mean, obviously when you go into Essen, you're not just going to be going there as a guest, you're going to be, as work. You're going to be going there as a recognised designer of a very successful kind of board game. I mean, have you even thought about that side of
No,
things, or am I
it's
just
you know,
about to?
it's still very bizarre to me at times when I'm at a convention and someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, I love Dinosaur Island," and it's like one of my favorite games, or something like that. It still blows my mind because to me, I just feel like a regular guy who got lucky, and when I was at Gen Con, I had this girl just tell me it was her absolute most favorite game ever, and she asked if she could get a hug, and she asked if she could take a picture with me, and I'm sitting there going, "Who am I? I'm just some guy who designed a dinosaur game, and this person, it's impacted their life, to give them joy or fun or whatever." And it's really satisfying. That was a really humbling moment, but it was also very surreal because like I said, I just kind of sit there and go, I'm no one special. I'm just a guy.
But I kind of like that about the community, though. I kind of still like that about the kind of the board game community, that you can bump into various different people. And we've not reached the point where there's the kind of the PR person with a clipboard kind of stepping in between you. I mean, you could walk up to Isaac Childress at Gen Con, or you could see if you saw Eric Lang, or if I saw John at a convention, you'd probably be able to walk up to him and there wouldn't be somebody standing in front of the clipboard going, "And who are you? And do you have an appointment?" You'd just be able to kind of approach them, and that's what I still like about the hobby, is that you still get all these stories of people coming back from places like Gen Con and Origins and saying, "Look who I got my picture with, look who I got to sign this, look who I got to sign that." And I think that's just what's wonderful about the board game kind of its community. It's still very people focused, and people getting involved, and people able to meet the designers and the developers and the illustrators and things like that. And there's not this kind of wall of somebody trying to hold the two people back, which I think is still kind of pretty cool. Have you been to Germany before, Brian?
I have not. I've been out of the U.S. Overseas because I've been to Canada, but I've been out over once, and that was I was in grad school. I was in a choir that sang. We went to Russia. So I was in Russia with a stopover in Prague, but I've not been to Germany.
You're quite excited about going?
I am, but I'm also scared. I've let it be known that I'm kind of a scaredy cat when it comes to travel, just because I feel like I'm so insulated here in the U.S. Like I only speak English, and so going over to Germany, I'm a little scared.
You're also not a fan of different foods. You're not very adventurous when it comes to cuisine.
What are you talking about? I love all the different kinds of cuisines.
I thought you were the one that's always picky at conventions.
No. Picky about... I don't want to order, unknown food. I want someone to have an opinion as oh, yes, go to this restaurant. It's really good, because I don't want to spend money on a bad meal. I'm cheap.
Nobody.
I definitely think, no, it'll be fine. My brother used to stay in Germany, and what he used to find about, he says, no matter where he was in Germany, if you were speaking to a German local person and they discovered that all you could speak was English, they used to speak English at him. In fact, he found it almost impossible to learn any of the German language, because any time they discovered he was Scottish, they kept, they said, "Well, I'm going to speak English to you so I can practice." Oh, wow. So, kind of thing. So, so I think you're going to find it's going to be fun, and it's going to be an experience. And I've heard it's very much it can be quite busy, but not in that sense, just the sheer volume of games that are kind of released in that place as well. Right. But I mean, you'll be fine, Brian. You'll have so many people probably walking up to you with little pads of paper and saying, Can you sign my game?"
I also feel like Brian doesn't like beer, so he's really going to miss out a big part of the...
This is true. I don't like beer. I'm a hard liquor kind of guy.
John, bitter little puppy Gilmour. The boy's about to have an experience of a lifetime. Please can you step off the porch and sit back down in your chair and be happy for your new colleague and your friend.
He's not going to like it.
You know,
I love bratwurst.
It's going to be fine.
You do love bratwurst.
Yeah.
Schnapps. You can just drink a lot of schnapps over there.
Oh, I'm totally okay with that.
I think bratwurst is one of these things that probably only exists outside of Germany and doesn't actually exist in Germany. And if you went into
Oktoberfest is a sham, is that?
Oh no, they have other words.
Oh, okay.
It's not even in. Yeah, I mean, Black Forest Gateau is a flan. You can look it up. It's not a big cake full of chocolate and cherries. It's actually a flan.
Ooh.
So it's just that the whole thing is an absolute.
And what's it called again?
Black Forest Gateau.
I will look at that.
There you go. You have a look at that. You have absolute fun. You have an absolutely fantastic time. And don't let certain grumpy bears kind of put you down either. John G, I'm talking to you. Now
I am trying to convince him to send me to UK Games Expo next year.
Oh, I think I'm going to that one.
This is turning into a proper kind of argument in a kind of a married couple kind of, well, you went out with your friends last week. Well, I'm going out with my friends this week. Well, you said you were going bowling. Well, I'm not going bowling. I'm going bowling in 2 weeks' time.
I need to make it over there some point to scout for games for us. So, it's on Tread Market.
You do.
If I'll let you go to the UK if someone sends me to Australia. That's fine. You can go to PAX Australia. You can do whatever you want in Australia. I would love to visit the Sydney Opera House. Well, there you go. Yeah. I feel like this is a good agreement.
I think this is I'm glad that we've worked through these issues, and I think that we're coming out on the other side as colleagues who are willing to listen to each other, cooperate with each other, and work together to see a brighter and more wonderful kind of future. But if you were together, I'd be grabbing both of your ears and telling you to sort yourselves out. But that's beside the point. In terms of Mint Cooperative, look, I can only wish you the very best of luck. It's coming to Kickstarter. It's no doubt going to do kind of very, very well. And as normal, what we will do is we will make sure that we will put a link to the campaign in our show notes. If people want to keep an eye on you guys anytime, you're my first and you were my best, John. If people do want to keep an eye on you, where do you exist on the internet webs? Mr. Lewis, where can we find you?
So on Instagram and Twitter at Brian Lewis Games.
Mm-hmm. And John.
And
where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at John Gilmour, JONGILMOUR, or on Facebook or BGG. I think BGG, I'm J Gilmour, maybe.
There you go. And if you want to learn more about the game, you can find a little bit on, I think it's Five24. It's Five, 24 is the numbers, labs.com. And there is a little bit about Mint Cooperative on their page. It's actually got its own little website, mintcooperative.com, and it's got smiley little faces of both of you.
It does.
It's fantastic. We do like it. Excellent. Brilliant. And we'll, as I say, when it goes live, we'll make sure there's a link in the show notes so that we have notes to show. Thank you very, very much for coming on, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
It's been good to speak to you, and I'm glad you kind of worked through your little differences yet, maybe. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, go to the internet, search for We Are Not Wizards, and you'll find us. If you want to see what we've done, we're on Instagram and YouTube. Just search for We Are Not Wizards. If you want to listen to us, then check out all the podcast catchers, the ones with pod, the ones with cast, and the ones that don't have anything. If you want to keep read or listen or kind of look at our nonsense, We've got our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. We've got our website, which is we'renotwizards.com. We've got our Twitter, which is at we'renotwizards.com. You can find us in all these different worn out places and worn out faces. If you like what you've listened to, tell somebody about us, because that's how we spread and that's how we got to 100,000 downloads. Aren't we silly? Well, we're not silly, because we didn't have to repeatedly listen to us. That's you. But the other thing you can do is you can jump onto Apple Podcasts and drop us a rating or a review. If you are going to be dropping us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes us big-headed. And as you can think at the moment, I am very, very pleased with myself indeed. But don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry. But at the moment, it doesn't matter what stars you gave us, because I'd be smiling anyway. But try to give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. We're just a little bit average. But the gentlemen who have not been average tonight, I've got the wonderful, fantastic Mr. Brian Luce. Thank you very much for coming on,
Thank you so much for having me.
And I've got, I mean, it's John Gilmour. I mean, how else do you say? It's just John Gilmour. Goodness sake, John Gilmour. You know what I mean? Thank you very much for coming on,
It's my
John.
pleasure as always.
And there's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards,
No,
gentlemen?
we're not. No.
Of course we're not.
I
Of course
wish.
we're not. Don't ruin it at the end, please. And finally, it's a goodbye from Brian. Say goodbye, Brian.
Goodbye, Brian.
It's a goodbye from John. Say goodbye, John.
Goodbye, Brian.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful, and if you see Brian in Essen, take a picture. Send it to John.
Aww.
But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.